Josh. I tell people anything that they don't like, any institution that they want to tear down, they simply just refer to it with the magic word racism or white supremacy or systemic racism, and suddenly that institution, basically any institution that they don't control, becomes a target. And so we're seeing now multiple states moving forward with this idea that racism is a public health crisis. And of course, today, in the minds of these people, racism means something very, very different than it did just 5 or 10 years ago. The idea of hating a person for their ethnic background or whatever, it's a totally different word now, and that's some of the games that they play. Of course, the idea that climate change is a public health crisis, well, they're arguing that climate change is caused by human emissions of CO2. There's no human activity that doesn't emit CO2. In fact, you exhale about 2 pounds of it every day. In other words, every single human activity would then fall under the rubric of contributing to a global public health crisis. And of course, gun violence too. They've been very open. I mean, the CDC has now said multiple times over the last few years, all the way up to the director, that gun violence is a public health crisis, needs to be treated as a public health crisis. So this really would be the camel's nose under the tent for, in my opinion, very draconian controls over essentially every area of life. They're not going to be done with this. They're going to be trying and trying and trying until they manage to make these kinds of changes.
Well, and I was shocked actually to see kind of the two-faced narratives of a lot of the mainstream media, where on one side they were claiming that anybody saying that this was even real was a conspiracy theorist, and the other side they're reporting on it and acknowledging that it's taking place and that these are actually happening. Like these two-faced lies they tell, it's so deceptive.
We know that the people running the WHO are not exactly liberty-minded, Constitution-respecting American citizens. The current chief, Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus, is a very close ally of Communist China. He was actually on the Politburo of an ethno-Marxist terrorist organization, the Tigray People's Liberation Front, and then he served as the right-hand man for really a very brutal dictator in Ethiopia. So these powers would be very dangerous. Now, they did get dealt a defeat, a temporary setback, if you will, at the WHO meeting. Some of the African governments, some of the South American, especially the Brazilian government, really resisted, as I understand. But, and this is the main point of the article that I wrote, these people are not going away. It's not like, oh, we lost, and so I guess we'll just go back home and we'll do something different. Absolutely not. I talked to Dr. Francis Boyle. He's a professor of international law at the University of Illinois. He actually wrote the implementing legislation for the Biological Weapons Convention passed unanimously by Congress. And what he said is he thinks they're going to just try to roll these amendments into the International Pandemic Treaty that they're going to be working on this summer. And several other experts that I spoke with said even if they can't get it into the Pandemic Treaty, they're going to try. And if they can't, they'll just be resubmitting similar amendments in September when the next round of amendments is due. So the threat is definitely not over, Josh. And I think this very clearly is an attack on the national sovereignty of nations and the ability of peoples to govern themselves.
Yeah, well, crazy stuff. One question I was getting from a lot of my viewers was, well, can't the United States block this? Won't the United States, how can they enforce the United States? And I was actually shocked to see that a lot of the really bad amendments actually came from the Biden administration, including the one that would allow them to basically bypass local governments in different countries in order to declare pandemics, and also removed any need to have like an official, evidence-based declaration where Tedros could basically just declare things based on whatever information he wanted. Those actually came from the Biden administration. And I was shocked to see that.